Love in Los Angeles. Los Angeles. It had always been nothing more than a vivid dream for Emma. Glossy magazine covers, Hollywood movies where people chased their wildest desires, endless sunshine, and palm trees swaying in the breeze. From her small hometown in Ohio, the city felt distant, unattainable, like something only meant for other people. While LA lingered in her imagination as a symbol of reinvention, she never really believed she'd end up there. Her story began, like many do, on a completely ordinary day. Another gray Monday, a buzzing office with dull ceilings, a mountain of reports, and that creeping sense of routine tightening its grip. But then her boss, Mr. Reynolds, summoned the team for a quick meeting. "We've got a big project kicking off in Los Angeles," he announced, his voice sharp and confident. "And Emma, I want you on it. You're flying out next week." First, she just stared. Los Angeles? Was he serious? "You mean me?" she asked, stunned. "Absolutely," he replied without hesitation. "This is your shot. Show us what you're capable of." Her heart fluttered, a cocktail of excitement and fear. It was the kind of opportunity that only came around once in a lifetime. And while a part of her wanted to say yes immediately, another part whispered, "Are you ready for this?" The days leading up to her departure blurred into a whirlwind. She ran errands, picked out clothes that felt LA enough, and spent her evenings perfecting presentation slides and reviewing marketing data. Yet every night, as she lay in bed, the same question returned. What if this trip really changed everything? The morning of her flight, Emma woke up early, heart pounding. She looked out the window at the familiar streets of Ohio, knowing she was about to leave her old life behind. The moment the plane touched down at LAX, everything shifted. Warm air poured into the cabin as the doors opened. The light was golden, the breeze salty with a hint of flowers and sunscreen. As she stepped outside, the air smelled like something entirely new. Opportunity. A cab took her to a small boutique hotel near the Hollywood Hills. Sleek, artistic, and lined with marble floors and lush green plants, it was unlike anything she'd stayed in before. She tossed her suitcase onto the bed and stepped onto the balcony, taking in the view. The city sprawled endlessly beneath her, glowing, alive, humming with the promise of stories waiting to be told. "I'm really here," she whispered. That evening, unable to stay inside a moment longer, Emma grabbed her camera, threw on a breezy outfit, and made her way to Venice Beach, a place she'd only ever seen in movies or on social media. It was everything she imagined and more. Waves rolled in gently, surfers paddled through glowing water, and musicians played acoustic guitar on sidewalks painted in color. Street vendors shouted over the sound of crashing waves, and the scent of roasted corn and grilled burgers filled the air. She walked slowly, savoring it all. The setting sun painted the sky in glowing shades of rose and gold. She stopped at a small cafe, bought an iced coffee, and turned toward the boardwalk to find a place to sit. And that's when it happened. She bumped hard into someone, nearly losing her grip on the cup. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she gasped, stepping back in shock. "It's okay. I've got you," came a warm voice, calm, confident, and a hand gently caught her elbow. Emma looked up. Time paused. He was tall, tanned, his blondish-brown hair tousled by the breeze. His smile was effortless, and his eyes, a deep, arresting blue, sparkled with humor. His casual t-shirt clung perfectly to his frame, and there was something magnetic about him, like he belonged in this city. This is a classic LA moment, he said, laughing. Let me guess. You're new here? Emma tried to regain her balance, physically and mentally. Yeah, just landed today, she admitted, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I'm Emma. Jake, he said, offering a handshake. Welcome to the West Coast. I swear you're starting things off right. Knocking into people, losing your coffee. It's practically a rite of passage. She laughed, still slightly flustered, but he made her feel strangely at ease, like the two of them were the only ones there on that busy, chaotic beach. Well, Emma, Jake added, pointing to her now half-empty drink, I think it's only fair I buy you a new coffee. Redemption arc, you know? She hesitated for a moment. The voice of caution whispered, You're here for work, not this. But something stronger, intuition maybe, said, This moment matters. Emma smiled. I'd like that. They walked side by side toward a cozy cafe tucked behind a row of surf shops. As they ordered and sat by the window, the city continued to glow behind them, but her focus was entirely on him. The conversation was easy, filled with light teasing and little discoveries. He was a freelance photographer who shot surfers for lifestyle magazines. She worked in marketing and had never lived outside her home state. The more they talked, the more the noise of the world faded away. Later, as they stepped back onto the boardwalk, the city had shifted again. It no longer felt too big or overwhelming. With Jake beside her, it felt like a story just beginning. Venice Beach glimmered under streetlights as they walked. The sea breeze played with Emma's hair. Somewhere in the distance, someone played a melancholic tune on a saxophone. Thanks for saving my coffee run, she said. Any time, Jake grinned. Just promise me something. What's that? Don't let this be your only LA story. Emma looked up at him, and in that moment, something in her heart clicked. I won't, she said softly. And as they walked into the night, the city behind them full of stories, Emma knew hers had just begun. Emma couldn't sleep that night after her chance meeting with Jake. She lay on the crisp white sheets of her hotel room, staring at the ceiling, her heart still racing from emotions she hadn't felt in a long time. Her mind kept circling back to every detail. His laughter, the way his deep blue eyes sparkled when he looked at her, the light touch of his hand when he steadied her. It was all so unexpected. She had come to Los Angeles for work with no intention of anything but business, but that one evening had already begun to shift everything inside her. The next morning, just after 10, her phone vibrated with a new message. Jake, good morning, newbie. Hope you got some rest after last night's adventure. What do you say to seeing the real Los Angeles tonight? I know a spot with the best view in town. Emma read the message over and over, her smile growing wider each time. Her fingers danced quickly across the screen. Emma, count me in. Where and when? The reply came almost instantly. Jake, 7 p.m. Outside Skyline Rooftop Restaurant downtown. See you then. Emma spent the rest of the day restless. She tried to focus on work, answering emails, refining her presentation slides, but her thoughts kept drifting to the evening ahead. She changed outfits 3 times before settling on a soft pink dress that brought out her summer glow, paired with a light denim jacket. She left her hair down, loose waves cascading over her shoulders, giving her that effortless, California vibe she hoped for. At exactly 7 p.m., she arrived at the restaurant. Jake was already waiting, leaning casually against the wall, scrolling through his phone. He looked effortlessly cool, wearing a crisp light shirt and dark jeans that highlighted his athletic frame. "Hey, gorgeous," he greeted with a grin when he spotted her. "You look incredible." "Thank you. This place looks amazing," Emma replied, glancing up at the rooftop lit by strings of fairy lights, promising a breathtaking view. They rode the elevator to the top floor, and when the doors opened, the city stretched out before them, a sea of shimmering lights that seemed to go on forever. Los Angeles, loud and bustling by day, transformed at night into something almost magical, romantic, and endless. They settled at a corner table, the perfect spot to take it all in. The waiter brought over menus, California-inspired dishes, fresh seafood, crisp salads, and colorful cocktails. But the food wasn't what mattered. They talked, and talked, and time seemed to slip away. Jake shared stories about his life as a freelance photographer, how he chased sunrise shots on deserted beaches, how he captured surfers carving through towering waves, how he once got caught in a rip current and barely made it out. His passion and daring spirit made Emma's eyes widen in amazement. She opened up, too, about her job, her small-town life back in Ohio, how every day felt the same, and how she'd always dreamed of breaking free and chasing an adventure, even if just once. "Well," she said with a smile, taking a sip of her cocktail, "I guess I'm finally getting my adventure." Jake looked at her, his gaze soft and lingering. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "all it takes is one meeting to change everything." Emma felt her breath catch. There was something in the way he looked at her, a sincerity, a pull, that made her feel seen, really seen, for the first time in ages. After dinner, they wandered through the streets, letting the city wrap around them like a warm blanket. Los Angeles was alive, even past midnight. Music spilled out of bars, laughter echoed down alleyways. Neon lights flickered and danced across pavement still warm from the day's sun. They made their way to the beach. The boardwalk was quieter now, the ocean shimmering silver under the moonlight. Waves whispered against the sand, and for a moment, it felt like they were the only two people in the world. They found a bench near the water's edge and sat down, the cool air brushing against their skin. "This might be the best night of my life," Emma confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers as naturally as if they'd done it 1,000 times. "And this is only the beginning," he murmured, leaning in closer. Their first kiss was soft and unhurried, full of promise and unspoken feelings. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a spark, a door opening to something new and unexpected. That night, as Emma walked back to her hotel, her heart felt full, her mind spinning. The city glowed around her, and everything seemed brighter, bigger, and full of possibility. She knew that this trip was supposed to be about work, but something inside her whispered. Los Angeles had just given her something far more powerful, a story she never expected to live, and it was only just beginning. The days that followed were a blur of sun-drenched skies, endless laughter, and stolen glances that spoke louder than words. What had started as a chance meeting quickly blossomed into something neither Emma nor Jake had expected, but both of them were powerless to resist. Every morning, Emma woke up with a lightness in her chest, a smile already tugging at her lips. Work remained her official reason for being in Los Angeles, but her thoughts constantly drifted to Jake. Every spare moment they could steal together, they did. One bright Saturday, Jake picked her up early, grinning as she climbed into his old Jeep Wrangler, its roof down, the warm California sun already spilling across the seats. Ready to see my favorite side of LA? He asked, eyes sparkling. Emma laughed, pulling her hair back as the wind tugged at it. I thought I already had. Oh, not even close. He took her up the winding roads of Malibu, the Pacific stretching out endlessly to their right, glittering under the sun like a giant sheet of glass. They stopped at a secret beach, a hidden cove Jake swore only locals knew about. The sand was warm beneath their feet, and the only sounds were the waves and their own breathless laughter as they raced each other down to the shore. They spent hours there, walking barefoot in the surf, sharing stories, and lying on a blanket watching the clouds drift lazily across the sky. At one point, Jake pulled out his camera, snapping candid shots of Emma as she played with her hair or stared dreamily at the horizon. You're a natural, he teased, showing her the photos later. Emma blushed. I've never felt this free. Jake smiled, leaning in closer. That's what this city does to you. Or maybe, he paused, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. It's just us. They kissed again, the salty breeze wrapping around them, making everything feel infinite. In the days that followed, they explored every corner of Los Angeles together. Sunset hikes in Runyon Canyon, rooftop dinners overlooking neon-lit streets, lazy mornings at the farmer's market where they sampled fresh fruit and pastries. One night, Jake surprised her with tickets to an outdoor movie screening in Griffith Park. They lay side by side on a picnic blanket, surrounded by flickering fairy lights and the soft hum of the city below, watching an old romantic film that felt, in that moment, like a reflection of their own story. Emma turned to look at Jake, his profile illuminated by the silver glow of the screen. She felt her chest tighten, a mixture of joy and something deeper, something more vulnerable. Jake, she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. This feels too good to be true. He turned to her, his eyes searching hers. It feels real to me, he said, brushing his thumb across her knuckles. And I don't want it to end. Neither did she. But even as the words settled between them, Emma couldn't help but feel the faintest twinge of worry. In the back of her mind, the clock was always ticking, reminding her that this was temporary, that her flight back to Ohio was already booked. Still, she refused to let that thought ruin what they had. Not now. Not yet. The next weekend, Jake took her on a spontaneous road trip up the coast. They drove with no real plan, stopping wherever caught their eye. A cliffside diner for milkshakes, a tiny art gallery tucked away in a sleepy town, a lighthouse where they watched the sun dip below the horizon. That night, they checked into a quaint bed and breakfast, their room cozy and filled with the scent of lavender. They sat out on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, sipping wine and watching the stars scatter across the inky sky. Have you ever thought about staying here? Jake asked suddenly, his voice quiet but serious. Emma's breath caught. In LA. He nodded. I mean, I know you have your life back home, your job, but what if? Emma stared out at the stars, her heart thudding painfully. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to throw caution to the wind, to believe that love really could rewrite all her plans. But instead, she whispered, I don't know. Jake didn't press. He simply pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head, and they sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The next day, as they drove back to the city, Emma felt the weight of reality creeping in. She stared out the window, watching the ocean blur past, her fingers tracing patterns on her knee. Jake reached over and squeezed her hand, as if sensing her shift in mood. She smiled, grateful. but her chest ached with the knowledge that they were living on borrowed time. That night, as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling of her hotel room, tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. She had never expected to find this kind of love here, a love that was wild and free, yet also deep and real. She didn't know what the future held. But for now, she let herself sink into the memory of Jake's kisses, his laughter, the way his hand felt wrapped around hers. And she whispered into the darkness, "Please don't let this end." The fairy tale couldn't last forever, and deep down, Emma always knew that. The morning sun rose over Los Angeles, casting its golden glow across the skyline. But for Emma, the magic felt muted. The last few weeks had been a whirlwind of joy, passion, and adventure. But something had shifted, subtle at first, like a ripple in still water. It started with the smallest things. Jake seemed a bit quieter, his eyes lingering on her a little longer, as if memorizing every detail. Emma caught herself staring at her calendar too often, her return flight home growing closer by the day. One evening, after another perfect dinner at a beachside restaurant, they walked along the shore in comfortable silence. The moon hung low over the water, and the waves lapped gently at their feet. Jake finally broke the silence. "It's getting close, isn't it?" Emma's chest tightened. She didn't need to ask what he meant. She knew. She had been counting down the days herself, even though every part of her wish time would freeze. "Yeah," she whispered, her voice fragile. "Next week." He stopped walking and turned to her, his face serious in the moonlight. "Emma, I don't know what to do with this. With us." She looked up at him, her heart breaking. "Neither do I." Jake exhaled, brushing a hand through his hair. "This was supposed to be simple. You were just here for work, and I thought it would be fun, light. But it's not that anymore, is it?" Emma shook her head, tears burning in her eyes.
No.
"It's not." He reached out and took her hands in his. "I care about you, more than I expected, and it scares the hell out of me." Emma squeezed his hands tightly, her own voice trembling. "I feel the same, but what do we do? I have my life back home, my job, my family." Jake was silent for a long moment, staring out at the endless ocean. "I don't want to lose you," he said finally, his voice thick with emotion. "But I also don't want to hold you back from your life." The next few days were a mix of beauty and quiet sadness. They still spent time together, walking through farmers' markets, watching sunsets, laughing over silly jokes. But beneath it all was a tension they couldn't ignore. Every moment felt heavier, every touch tinged with the knowledge that their time was slipping away. One afternoon, they sat at their favorite coffee shop, both staring at their drinks, lost in thought. Jake finally broke the silence. "I've been thinking, maybe long distance could work, at least until we figure things out." Emma's heart ached at his words. Part of her wanted to believe it was possible, but another part, the practical, cautious part, knew how hard it would be. "I don't know," she said softly, her eyes filling with tears. "I want to say yes. I want to believe we can make it work. But
I'm scared.
what if we end up hurting each other more?" Jake reached across the table and took her hand. "I don't have the answers either. But I know one thing. Meeting you has been the best thing that's happened to me in a long time." Emma bit her lip, tears spilling over now. "Me too." That night, as she lay in bed, Emma stared at the ceiling, the city lights casting faint patterns on the walls. She felt torn in two. One part of her wanted to throw everything away and stay, to dive headfirst into this love story. But the other part knew that real life was waiting. Her job, her responsibilities. They were all still there, no matter how much her heart ached. She closed her eyes, letting silent tears roll down her cheeks. "This isn't how it's supposed to end," she whispered to the empty room. In the final days before her flight, Emma and Jake clung to each other more desperately than ever. They revisited all their favorite spots, reliving their best moments like they were trying to bottle them up forever. On their last full day together, Jake took her back to the secret beach where it had all started. They sat on the sand, watching the waves crash, holding hands in silence. "I wish I could stop time," Emma said quietly, her voice breaking. Jake kissed her temple, his own eyes shining with unshed tears. "So do I." They didn't speak much after that. Words felt too small, too powerless to capture what they were feeling. Instead, they held each other, letting the sound of the ocean fill the spaces between their heartbeats. The night before her departure, Jake walked her back to her hotel, their fingers intertwined. At the door, they paused, neither wanting to say goodbye. "I don't want this to be the last time I see you," Jake said, his voice rough. Emma looked up at him, her heart shattering. "Me neither." He pulled her into a tight embrace, holding her as if he could somehow keep her there forever. When they finally pulled back, he pressed a lingering kiss to her forehead. "Good night, Emma." "Good night, Jake." She stepped inside, and as the door closed behind her, she leaned against it, tears falling freely now. Her heart whispered the words she couldn't bring herself to say aloud. "I love you." The morning of her departure arrived far too soon. Emma woke before dawn, her room still dark, except for the faint glow of the city lights seeping through the curtains. She lay there for a moment, her eyes staring at the ceiling, her heart heavy with dread. Today was the day she had been pretending would never come. Her suitcase sat by the door, neatly packed and ready to go. But Emma wasn't ready. Not in her heart, not in her soul. Every fiber of her being wanted to stay, to hold onto the magic that had unfolded in Los Angeles. A soft knock at her door broke her thoughts. She opened it to find Jake standing there, his hands deep in his pockets, his face tight with emotion. "I know we said goodbye last night," he said softly, "but I couldn't let you leave without seeing you one last time." Emma's throat tightened. She stepped aside silently, letting him in. He looked around her room, at the suitcase, the empty bed, the small signs that their time together was ending. "So, this is really it," he murmured. Emma nodded, her eyes already brimming with tears. "Yeah, this is it." They sat down side by side on the edge of the bed, shoulders touching, neither speaking at first. The silence between them was thick with unspoken words, with love and sadness tangled together. Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "I wrote you something," he said, handing it to her. "Don't open it until you're on the plane." Emma took it with trembling hands, holding his gaze. She wanted to say something profound, something that could capture everything she felt, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she leaned forward, wrapping her arms around him tightly. He held her just as fiercely, as if neither of them wanted to let go. "I'll never forget you," Emma whispered into his shoulder, her voice breaking. "Same," Jake said hoarsely. "You've changed me, Emma." They pulled back, and without another word, he kissed her, slow, deep, and full of everything they couldn't say out loud. It was a kiss that felt like goodbye and forever all at once. When it was time, Jake carried her suitcase down to the lobby and waited with her for the cab. The city seemed to hold its breath around them, the usual buzz of Los Angeles softened by the weight of their moment. As the taxi pulled up, Jake turned to her, his eyes glassy. "I don't want to say goodbye." Emma's lips trembled. "Me neither." He cupped her face in his hands, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Be happy, Emma." She climbed into the cab, tears spilling freely now, and pressed her hand to the window as he stepped back. Their eyes locked as the car began to pull away, neither breaking the gaze until distance finally forced them apart. Emma didn't look back after that. She couldn't. On the plane, Emma sat with the envelope on her lap for a long while, her fingers tracing its edges. Finally, as the plane lifted into the sky, she opened it. Inside was a postcard, a photo of the Los Angeles skyline at sunset. On the back, Jake had written, "This city will never be the same without you. Thank you for bringing magic into my life. Wherever you go, a part of me will always be with you. Jake." Emma pressed the card to her chest, tears streaming down her cheeks, her heart breaking but also full of love. She looked out the window, watching the city shrink beneath her, a glittering tapestry of memories. This wasn't the ending she had dreamed of, but it was real and raw and beautiful. And she knew, no matter where life took her, that this love, brief, intense, unforgettable, would stay with her forever. With a deep breath, she whispered to herself, "Thank you, Los Angeles." And she let the tears fall, knowing that some love stories don't need forever to last a lifetime.